Hi, my name is Allison Shepard-Hildebrandt, and I am very spontaneously today giving you a prophetic word of encouragement. It is March 8th, 2018. This is a now word, you might say, but I believe that God can speak to people in any season with any kind of word. So if you're hearing this 2 years from now, I believe that this is a word for you. So I want to kind of backtrack and refer to some of my previous videos where I talked to you about a dream that I had 10 years ago. So I'm going to just give you the short version of that, and I'm going to talk to you about how it just came to pass. So 10 years ago, on February 22nd, 2022, I had this dream that my husband and I were in my old car from high school. And my old car from high school, I'm 43, so I haven't driven this thing in a long time. And my old car from high school had the ceiling falling down. I mean, it was falling apart. It was great when I first got it, but I drove it for quite a while, and it started to get worn down. Nevertheless, in my dream, we're in this old car, my husband and I believe that God uses things symbolically in our dreams to try to get our attention. So in my mind, I'm feeling like this vehicle is symbolic of an old mindset. So we're in this old mindset where we're literally enduring a storm within an old mindset. But in the dream, I heard God say to me that if you hold on to each other and you look unto me, you will get through this storm. And it's almost kind of like when Peter was asked by Jesus, to get out of the boat, or where Peter actually said, Lord, if it's you, ask me to get out of the boat. And he said, it is I, Peter. And so Peter gets out of the boat and he starts to walk on water towards Jesus in the midst of a storm. And as long as he focuses on Jesus, he doesn't sink. He can actually walk on the water. So in my dream, God said, look unto me, and you and Evan, your husband, will get through this storm. So we did. We got through the storm, and when we got through the storm, we get out of the car, and it's snowing. And we walk back to our house, and in front of our house, we had left the car there. We didn't drive the car home. So we got out of the car, we walked back to our house, and in front of the house, my dad is waiting there for us by the curb. And he has a new white van for us. And I was talking to my friend Shannon about this, and she was saying, Allison, vehicles can be symbolic of a lot of things, including ministry. And it's interesting to me that I actually released my first video on 2/22. And I got a Holy Spirit unction to release it because there were just too many coincidences, that are really, they're not coincidences. It's God trying to get my attention. So on 2/22, there were a lot of coincidences happening around this idea that you can't serve God and mammon, because you need to make sure that your perspective is single, right? And it's good, and that it's focused on Jesus. Because if it's not, then what's going to happen is your mindset is going to get into a place of fear and anxiety. Even if you have money, you might be, if you're under that spirit of mammon, which is what Jesus called that greed or that lust for money, or that worry about what you're going to eat, what you're going to wear, how you're going to pay your bills and all that. Jesus called that mammon. It's a spirit. So if you're worshiping that spirit, if you're fearing that spirit more than God, it puts your mind into a state of just constantly being performance driven, having fear of lack, orphan mindset, all that stuff. So, where was I? So anyways, I talked in my first video, that's what it was. My first video, I talked about repenting from being under that spirit of mammon, and I had different confirmations of this. My friend Colin was struggling with it, and since I've made that video, I've had so many people come up to me and say, hey, I was struggling with the same thing. Then a few days later, my pastor at Crossroads talked about the same exact thing, how you can't worship God and money. So there were a lot of confirmations. There was even one, oddly enough, on YouTube that came to my husband about bringing down a stronghold of mammon on that day, on 2/22. So 2/22, 2018, I was on my knees repenting to God, just telling him I'm sorry for trusting money more. And then what happened was my husband and I, we've been in a hard place financially for about a year, for a little over a year. We've had peaks and valleys throughout our careers as artists, but this past year has been really hard. We've had probably tens of thousands, I would say. I have not kept track because I don't want to dwell on what God is not doing. I want to pay attention to what God is doing. I don't want to give the enemy power to bring me into a place of despair or even being angry at God or judgmental at God. So I've tried not to think about the dollar amount, but the reality is that over the last year, we have had tens of thousands of art sales fall through. We went from making over $70,000 in 2016 in art sales alone to like nothing, like just a few $1,000s, where, God would bring the sale at just the right time to meet a need, but we were really struggling financially. My husband, worked several jobs. He's working a job right now. So, and then I applied for a bunch of jobs and didn't get any of them. So I was like, okay, God, you're shutting these doors. I guess I'm going to continue to believe, and I'm going to continue to walk this out. So 2008, I have that dream about getting through a storm and then getting back to the house. It's snowing, and my dad gives us a new van, a white van. And my friend Shannon talked about that being a symbol of a vehicle being a symbol of ministry. 2/22/2018 is when I launched my first video, and maybe this is a kind of ministry that God's calling me to share these videos as words of encouragement to people. So today is March 8th, and yesterday we went from having it was even the day before that, we went from having this springtime weather where it was really warm in Cincinnati to the temperature dropping very quickly. And then yesterday it started snowing like crazy. And yesterday, my dad, just like the dream I had 10 years ago on 2/22, my dad bought me and my husband a white van. I kid you not, just like the dream. And God is so specific and cares for us more than we can even fathom, that he made it snow yesterday, and it's still snowing today. So I just want to share that with you, because often what God does with his prophetic people, his prophetic voices, is he gets them to actually, well, he doesn't get them, but he chooses them, and then they live out what he's doing in the body of Christ at large. They live it out in the natural, so that when they speak what God is doing, they do it from a place of experience, compassion, and authority. He did this with the prophet Hosea, where he wanted to show the Jewish people that even though they had been like harlots in their idolatry, he wanted to remain a steadfast lover of their souls. And so Hosea actually married a harlot, and that was a picture of God's steadfast love. So often he does that with his prophetic people, is he allows them to go through stuff that he is doing at large in his body. So I have been enduring a storm. 2017 was hard, and tens of thousands of dollars of art sales falling through it's not an easy thing. Hope deferred can set in, and I started to doubt, God, did you really call me to do this? And when I left my job as a professor, I left under this passionate kind of desire, unction, if you will, to see what it's like to make a living as an artist, so that when I went back to teaching, I could teach from a place of the integrity of experience. That was really important to me. And so I've begun to go back to teaching. I'm starting to have students come into my house, and I'm just starting to teach in different arenas. And I have been struggling because I haven't been in a place of financial success with art sales. But I want to share with you some good news today. Not only did we get a van yesterday, And I mean, I'm being raw and real with you guys today. I didn't plan this video, but I just felt like because of the timing, because of all these coincidences that God is doing, that I just needed to just release this to you guys, because there might be someone out there who's like me and you've been in a storm and you're really discouraged and hope deferred has set in and your heart is sick and you're despairing. But I want to tell you that God is getting ready to break out and bring you breakthrough. Be brave. Focus on Jesus. Do not focus on the storm. The storm is a distraction, okay? You're not going to sink. And even when Peter did sink because he started to focus on the storm, Jesus picked him up. He was all right. So don't get into self-condemnation. If you do get scared, if you have meltdowns. I had a meltdown this morning. My checking account was overdrawn, okay? So it's okay to be real about, having hard times. But don't get into judgment. Don't get into anger at God. God is on the move. The enemy has brought the storm, not God. But like Graham Cook says about Satan, really he's just the sheepdog, right? So whatever Satan does to try to bring us down, it's going to be used by God in order to bring restoration, in order to bring redemption. So don't focus on what the enemy is doing. Focus on what God is doing and ask God, what are you doing? And I forgot what I was going to say. But anyway, we made an art sale today. The money's not in my pocket yet, but I'm meeting with the guy this weekend. Is it a big art sale? No, it's not a big art sale. But God is priming the pump. We got the van yesterday. And not only did we get the van yesterday, but Cincinnati went from spring-like weather to having snow. So in my dream, it was snowing when the storm ended, and we walked back to our house, and my dad gives us the white van in my dream on 2/22, 10 years ago. 10 years later, on March 7th, it's snowing, and we get a white van. God cares so much about the details. Here's the other thing that's happening, these crazy little God winks and coincidences. Some of you may feel like a Joseph. You may feel like your dreams have been killed. So Joseph had a dream, and then he was put in a pit, and he was put in a prison before that dream ever came to pass. But what I want to say to you today is Genesis 50:20, I believe it is whatever the enemy or circumstances has come into your life to create evil in your life, to create storms in your life, God is going to take it and he's going to turn it around for your good. So I want to encourage you today to not give up. God is going to take your storm and he's going to use it for your benefit. And your breakthrough is coming. Your breakthrough is on the other side. He has made some crazy things come to pass for me in just the last couple days. I don't have everything I want right now, but I know God's going to provide. How crazy is that the white van that I dreamt about 10 years ago is now, we have it. It's like in front of our house, and we made an art sale this morning, so he is on the move. God is on the move. And I want to encourage you to not give up. Be like Joseph when he was in the pit, when he was in the prison. He still did what God was calling him to do. He was a prophetic man. He interpreted dreams. And wherever he went, even though it may not have been his ideal situation, he was like cream rising to the top because God's hand was on him and he was faithful unto God. He looked unto God. So be like Joseph and keep looking unto God. Be like Peter and take risks and get out of the boat and focus on Jesus. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, so there was the Joseph thing that came up that my friend Julia told me about, and my friend Shelley actually had talked to me years ago about how I reminded her of Joseph because his dream had to die a few times. And I've dreamt about having a school or some kind of artistic training center where I could teach other artists, some of the some of the ropes of what it's like to be an artist, either part-time, full-time, or as a hobby. But I could do that from the integrity of experience of knowing what it's like to try to make a living at this thing. But I haven't started that school yet. It's starting slowly, where I'm starting to teach here and there, and I've got a few students, but it hasn't really launched. But it's happening. It's in the works. So like Shelley said, sometimes the dream has to die a few times before it can come to pass. And my friend Julio sent me this devotional about Joseph. What Julio took away from it was that he was also like a Joseph, and that his character needed to be refined. And I know that that's true for me, that what God has done through this hardship with me and my husband over the last year is he's totally refined our character. Nothing is wasted with God. So he's taken this year of feeling like failures as artists, because we've had tens of thousands of sales literally fall through. Like, we have somebody who wants to buy a piece, and then at the last second they change their mind. So he's taken that time of difficulty and he's refined our character. And we are, I guess you could say, more in faith, more humble, more confident in the Lord than we've ever been. We're seeking his face and not his hands. These are the treasures in heaven that we're storing up. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. Yes, it's been hard. I feel like I have new crow's feet because of it. But it's been worth it. And so I want to encourage you that if you're in that place, don't give up and ask God, what are you doing? How are you using this for your glory and to refine my character? And I'm going to share with you, before I move on to the next coincidence, I'm going to share with you another little story. So last year, we were renting our house so that we could be in Europe for a little while for me to go to school. And we came back in late January, and we were still renting our house, and we rented it for a year. So we lived with my in-laws for a little while. And while we were not in our house and we had rented it out to our friend Kelly, we have some peach trees in our yard. And Kelly was able to enjoy some of those peaches, which was really cool. But they bore so much fruit that actually one of the limbs cracked off, literally fell under the weight of that fruit. And I thought, wow, that's crazy. So I was asking God, does that mean something? Because sometimes he uses things like that in the natural to speak to us. And he said to me, Allison, that is a prophetic picture of what would happen to you if you came into your fruitfulness too soon. I am pruning you this year. I am refining you this year so that when you bear fruit, your character has the strength and the fortitude to steward it well and to handle the weight of it, to handle the responsibility of that fruit. I don't want you to be like that tree that wasn't strong enough to handle all that fruit. I want you to be strong, and I want you to be ready for fruitfulness. So I'm pruning you this year. And I was like, okay, God, I can handle that. I trust you. You're faithful. I believe in you. Well, over the last couple days, the city has come and they're pruning trees in front of my house. So there's just too many coincidences that are happening. So there's things God's confirming. I get the van yesterday. It's snowing, just like it was in my dream. Trees are being pruned in front of my house. My friend Julio sends me the thing about Joseph and his character being refined, which reminded me of my friend Shelley talking to me about me being like a kind of Joseph. Here's the other coincidence that happened is I was, our checking account was overdrawn. And as I was crying out to God about this, I felt the urge to speak out that Jesus was asleep in the storm. There was another scripture where there was a storm. They were in the boat and Jesus was asleep. And interestingly enough, today, as I was texting my friends to pray for me, they wrote back and they talked about having peace in the storm. And my friend Shelley just literally had read a story to her kids last night about Jesus being asleep in the storm. So it was the exact thing that I had prayed to God. And then she said that's exactly what I read to my kids last night. And she said, I'm just believing that for you. So sometimes what God does is he allows prophetic people to go through things firsthand, just like he did with Hosea in the book of Hosea, where Hosea was married to a harlot. It was symbolic of God being married to the Israelites and their harlotry and idolatry, but him being steadfast in his love for them. So just like God did with Hosea, God does stuff in his prophetic voices where he allows them to live out the things that he's doing. And I'll talk more about that at another time. But he's allowed me to live out a storm. I'm starting to see the breakthrough of the storm. Literally, the dream I had 10 years ago has happened. There was a storm, then there was snow, then I get a new van. There was snow yesterday, snow today. I have a new van. My dad got me a new van, and it's a white van, just like the one in my dream, which just blows my mind. Blows my mind. So I want to speak to you guys out there who you may feel like you're a Joseph in the pit. You may feel like you're a Joseph in the prison. Or you may feel like you're Peter and God has called you to walk on water and there's a storm and you're scared. But I want to encourage you to speak to that storm and say peace, because God is with you. Peace. God is with you. And I release that to you today. Do not give up. Do not give up. God bless you.